record-breaking contracts, market-changing contracts. Myles Garrett, Derek Stingley, Jamar Chase. Now they all kind of reset the market. Can we expect any other big-time extensions before the draft?
Before the draft, I don't know.
Yeah, what about Hutch coming off the broken leg rap sheet? Does that change anything at all?
I don't think so. Timing-wise, I don't think so. I'm sorry. Timing-wise, yes. Actual, like what it'll end up as, I don't think so. Like the Lions have been very, very proactive in locking up their studs early. Like Penny Sewell got a huge deal really early.
Amon-Ra.
St. Brown.
Amon-Ra, Ali McNeil. Like they lock up their guys really early because they're smart. I mean, this is, it's like, I'm trying to remember what Amon-Ra's deal. I think Amon-Ra's deal was $28 million over the first 3 years average, right? I think that's what it was.
I thought it was 30. I thought he got to the 30.
I think the overall number was 30.
Yeah, I think it was 4 for 120. Overall, it was 30.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Right. And then 28 over the average over the first 3. And so, like, that's an awesome deal.
Yeah.
But they end up saving the money because all the receiver deals after, like, Brandon Ayuk comes in at 30, and then it's sort of like, well, you'd rather have Amon-Ra than Brandon Ayuk, right?
No doubt.
Like, so that ends up saving the money, so doing that early. So anyway, I would imagine Hutch gets done as soon as they are absolutely 100% sure that he's healthy and ready to roll.
What about Purdy? We've been talking about.
Okay, I think it's absolutely imperative to highlight the last few words of Ian Rappaport, something that I've been saying for several weeks now, that a deal is not going to get done here until the Lions are absolutely 100% confident that Aidan Hutchinson is ready to roll. And what he means by that, I can assume, is the same thing that I have meant by what I've said. You're coming off a major injury, and you don't know what this player is going to be like in a game. You have no idea what he's going to be like yet because he hasn't practiced. He hasn't had live practice against Penei Sewell or anybody else. So until Aiden is 100% ready, and the Lions know that, I can't imagine that the Lions are going to perform an extension right now, this minute. They have till May to pick up his fifth-year option, which is after the draft. It's strategic in nature that the Lions are going to get through the draft. They're going to see that they're going to draft the top-tier edge rusher for sure in this draft, and then they're going to focus on the players that they've identified, Aiden being one of them, as to who they're going to be able to get contract extensions done. Why is it important to get that extension done this season? We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about a conversation that I had with an executive, and I've got a pulled quote from the conversation asking about this exact situation. And again, I think it's important to understand, too, that market fluctuations that have really created this demand for defensive ends, it's multifaceted here. One, there's just not a ton of defensive ends growing on trees that can perform at the level that Aiden has, or Myles Garrett, or Max Crosby, or Trey Hendrickson, or Greg Rousseau, or, others, right? I think that Aiden belongs in that conversation of top 10. I don't think Aiden is quite there to be mentioned in the elite status of maybe the top 3 or 4, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, and there's a couple others. So I think that Aiden belongs, but, we're going to flush this out right now and kind of go through why it's important that the conditions that are set on getting this extension done are met, which is Aiden's health and making sure that he's ready to go, and how important that is for the Lions' future and also Aiden's future. So the Lions, there's no secret here. They're forward thinkers, 1,000%. They approach locking in these key players early, and they position themselves to do this advantageously amid all of the fluctuations in the market. The $30 million, salary bumps the last couple of seasons. It is artificially pumping up the market values of some of these positions like defensive end and wide receiver and quarterback. These agents are just salivating at the mouth to make these huge deals and holding these teams hostage, because what are you going to do? Other than walk away from a really good football player and hope that you can find somebody in the draft, which I'm less concerned about with Brad Holmes. So last offseason, the Lions made significant moves by extending the players that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell identified as these core leaders. It's for the Detroit Lions' future, and it's a systemic approach for them to identify these guys, figure out a contract that makes sense, get it done early, And the reason why I'm going over this is because this is what's going to lead into Aiden getting his deal done early and how that's going to end up helping the team overall for the long term. So these contracts that come with these high average annual values, the AAV, like Jared Goff at $53 million or Amon-Ra St. Brown at $30 million, Penei Sewell, $28 million. Taylor Decker, not so much. It wasn't a resetting type of deal at all, but still, $20 million, it's a lot of money for a left tackle. Gives up 8 sacks. How about Aleem McNeil? $24.25 million. So again, when you look at Milton Williams, he locked in a way overpaid deal this year, which is right around $26 million a year. So the fact that Aiden got done this last year at $24.25, well, the Lions are saving at least $2 million just based on the Milton Williams contract. But there's going to be more bigger deals that have yet to come that are going to overshadow the deals like Aleem McNeil. So where the Lions have found their niche here is negotiating these contracts early. This 2022 draft class with Aidan Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph, only one of them is really due right now, and that's Kirby. If you plan on keeping him, you have to do it now. And you have to do it now because this is his last season under player control. Aiden still has 2 more seasons, right? He has 25 and 26 once you pick up his 5th-year option. So entering his 4th year, this is the time to do it. This is also when I talk about roster roulette and how important it is to backfill what is essentially going to be a big contract with a rookie that can eventually, or maybe immediately, perform at or near the same level that Aiden did when he was a rookie and perform at or near the same level that Aiden did in his 2nd year. You can absolutely find that in this draft, and you can absolutely find that anywhere in the 1st round. It can be done. Now, Hutchinson in particular, he's obviously going to get a substantial contract. Given the premium placed on elite defensive ends, which we know really don't exist or not even really available, and before suffering his season-ending leg injury, some said last year he was on the trajectory to challenge the NFL single sack season record. Let me say that again. Single season sack record. There we go. And was performing at a level that was worthy of Defensive Player of the Year accolades. I mean, all that very well could be true. We will never know. Just like him possibly showing up in a Super Bowl. We would never know now. But his performance really solidified his status among what I consider the league's top defensive ends. That would be top 10. There's an elite class that I feel that he's just not there yet, but maybe he'll get there. So this season has already seen, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett set the stage, and then Garrett blew the roof off the place, right? They signed extensions. Crosby first, $33 or $35.5 million, huge deal, reset the floor. And then Garrett says, you know what? With that kind of a deal, I'm going to kind of pull back on my threat of trade or else. How much are you going to give me? And they throw him $40 million, over 4 seasons, $160 million deal. That shook the planet to its core, right? Or at least the NFL, like, wow. Yeah, these are big deals. And not every team can pull this off. As a result, though, I think that the Lions, or at least I understand that the Lions are likely preparing to allocate a very similar figure for Aidan Hutchinson. Will Aiden's contract eclipse $40 million, match $40 million, $40.1 million? I reached out and broached an NFL executive for comment, and the likelihood that Hutchinson resets the market again in 2025. And if you want to know what he said, well, you're going to have to catch. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to let you know right now. Here's what he said. Quote, Aiden, no doubt, has been electrifying during his short time in the NFL. He performs well inside a defense with space-eating defensive tackles commanding double teams. We've identified during last year's game prep, that Aiden struggled against longer offensive tackles one-on-one. I don't think it is wise to spend $40+ million on any defensive end. I would be leery to sign any player coming off a massive injury without proof that the player can perform. I wouldn't rush to extend in 2025. This was enlightening to me. One, I've kind of said similar things about the Leary to sign based on the injury. We've all kind of talked about that. But he mentioned in there the double team thing. He also said that they identified that during game tape. So I asked off the record, what game was he talking about? And I'm going to review that in another episode where I'm going to review a couple of Aiden's games and kind of review some of the plays, right? One that comes to mind from last year, Seattle. So we'll talk about that one later. Now, anyway, moving on from this, there was Albert Breer's breakdown on what this new extension could be. And if the Lions can get it done sooner rather than later, obviously that's going to help them. And it's kind of like a trick, if you will, like they used with Penei Sewell. So currently, like I said, Aiden has 2 seasons remaining under control. So the final year of his rookie deal and then the 5th-year option, which is due in May. They are expected to exercise the 5th-year option from what we understand, per the source. So this scenario does allow for a bit of creative restructuring or structuring, if you will, of a hypothetical extension. So effectively transforming a 4-year deal into a 6-year deal. Very interesting thought process. But this is what Albert Breer said. Quote, if the Lions secure Hutchinson now, he has $25.45 million owed over the next 2 years, which would incorporate into the new contract. For instance, if he signs a 4-year, $160 million extension with Detroit, that would extend his tenure through the 2030 season. In this case, the actual financial commitment would amount to $185.45 million over 6 years, averaging $30.9 million annually, end quote. Now, this makes a whole lot of sense to me, right? Where it's not a 4-year deal worth $160, which is $40 a year. If you somehow are extending this, above and beyond, and you turn it into a 6-year deal, I get it. But that's really not how it's going to work out. He's still going to get paid the $25 million over the next 2 seasons, right? Next year he would get, I think, $20 million for the 5th-year option, I think is what it was worth, 17 or 20. And then this year I think he's getting, well, at least 6 or 7 or whatever that number is, or 9, something like that. Anyway, combined, it's $25.45 million paid out over the next 2 seasons. But then in 2027, when his contract kicks in, you're talking an APY of $40 million a year. There's no other way to slice the pie here. Unless you completely throw this deal out the window, his deal currently, and you say, look, this is what we're going to give you. We're going to give you 186 over 6 years. Obviously, we'll guarantee this year and next year's salary that you already had. We'll give you another, chunk of guarantee, call it, 80, 90 million. Call it a day. If they could completely redo the contract, it would make more sense, but I don't see that happening. I think that they're going to want just a clear extension. The thing that I've also noticed, which we've noticed with DJ Reed's contract, we also noticed the Derek Barnes contract, is that the Lions, like I said, they're not only forward thinkers, they are re-strategizing how they're utilizing option bonuses to kind of carry the number a little bit further. I'm not so sure how that's going to work on a giant mega deal like this, but it'll be interesting to watch what happens the last 2 years of this extension. I think it's going to be drastically different than what we've seen before. So this innovative contract structure in these recent agreements, like I said, something to keep your eye on. Here's my final take, some of which you may not like. As the Lions really continue to build this roster, which they've been doing an excellent job, focusing on the long-term success, does that include Aidan Hutchinson with this big number? Well, I would say right now it probably does. If he's healthy, if he's 100% good to go, then I would say it does. The key step in fortifying the defensive line and maintaining their competitive edge in the league is ensuring that they can continue on the same plane that they're on right now and only add pieces to that. So you secured Aiden, you secured Aleem. Now you secure Aiden. You've got to do something at defensive tackle for the future, and you need to do something at defensive end for the future. The defensive backfield is almost secured for the long term. And then you have to focus on the linebacker room right after the defensive line because you have a couple of needs there. I don't believe that a deal gets done anytime soon with Aiden. I expect the Lions to do their due diligence here, especially on Aiden's recovery and rehab throughout OTAs, throughout training camp. If Aiden is showing that he can have the same or similar success that he had last season in camp against Panay, whatever that is, no idea whatever that is because you're going up against one of the best. Sometimes he wins. I think a lot of times he doesn't, just like everybody else in the league against Panay. But that is your benchmark test, right? What is he going to be able to do against Aiden or against Panay Sewell? So then maybe they'll get that deal done before the season starts. Very possible. Will it be a record deal? That's the biggest question. And I don't think that Aiden is even close to Myles Garrett or his elite status. And that's because Garrett has put up more than 14 sacks and 77 pressures over the last 5 seasons in a row. He's done this while beating the most double teams thrown his way of any defensive end. In one-on-ones, forget about it. You can't hold Myles Garrett back without holding and getting a penalty. Garrett has done this with no help from a Browns defense that has been abysmal. They really haven't been good at all. He hasn't really had a whole lot of help. He had Zadarius Smith there for a little bit, which was good, but I mean, we're not talking elite status on both ends here. And then if you were to compare that to what the Lions have had on defense since 2022, it doesn't compare. The Lions defense has been far and away better. So there's a stark difference for me. But I'm not tied to a player because of their story. I'm not tied to a player because of where they played college ball and that they're a Michigan man and grew up in Michigan and, you know, all of that good story stuff. I have learned to separate my feelings from my perspective, especially when it involves me giving any analysis. It doesn't mean that Brad Holmes sees it the same way. It doesn't mean that Brad Holmes doesn't value Aiden more than I do. I'm sure he does. But for me, when you look at the average salary of the top 10 defensive ends, and then if you really want to rank where these guys are, you can't make an argument that Aiden would ever deserve $40 million if you compare the work that Garrett has done and the work that Aiden has done. And then compare the tape and compare the defense, you know, surrounding both players. There's a big difference here. So that is why I have put Aiden's value somewhere between Josh Hines-Allen and Nick Bosa, $31.2 million. And I definitely look forward to the next defensive end being drafted in 2025 and how much that will help the Lions defense of the future. And maybe, hey, we get lucky. We get another Aiden on the other side. And we're just the dominant defense moving forward. So that's my take on Aiden. And I'm glad I had an opportunity to, you know, get some other perspective in on this. I expect something to get done, but I want to see Aiden healthy, and I think that the Lions do too. Anyway, that's it for this video. Appreciate you guys joining me. Go and probably go Detroit Lions. And go Aiden, man. Get healthy. Get out there. Get your money. I want to see you healthy. That's the most important thing. I just want to see him healthy and know that he's going to be all right because that's the most important thing. I'd hate to see the Lions waste $160 million because a guarantee's a guarantee. Hurt or not, you're getting that money. Anyway, that's all. Now for sure. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.